Cette conférence va maintenant être enregistrée.
Ok. Alors, est-ce qu'on attend? Non, c'est bon, il y a 5 minutes qui sont passées, tout le monde devrait être là, c'est ça?
Oui, je pense, ouais. Je pense que tu peux commencer.
Ouais. Ok, super. Bon, bah, je vais essayer de pas durer trop longtemps. So, today is about the what. Well, I just want to show you what is philosophy when you're working in cognitive science. And so I hope it will be clear. If it's not, don't hesitate to tell me, like, you're going too fast or you're not, well, I don't understand anything you're saying, whatever. So I am going to speak about the evolution of the concepts in cognitive science, and I just wanted to share with you this meme. I think you all here know it. It's the well-known meme of the expanding brain. This is wrong. What I wrote here is wrong. As you were here last week, you know that there are different approach of cognition in cognitive science, and behaviorism, cognitivism, emergentism, and activism could be somehow associated with these images of this meme, because you know that behaviorism tends not to ask what happened in the box of cognition. So it's like as if the brain won't be relevant in the question of I don't know, of understanding the mind, comprehend the mind, etc. And then with cognitive sciences, we have the question of the brain and how it works that emerge. And this is why we saw here brain activity with the lights in this meme. So this is cognitivism. Then you have this idea that thanks to the interaction of the brain parts, you have the emergence of cognition, and this is cognitivism. No, connectionism. Connectionism is a synonym, but not quite the same thing as emergentism. And at the end, you have this idea that cognition is not only something that is in your brain, but also is in relationship with your environment, and this is the embodiment, which have various acceptation instances, and one of them is an activism. So keep in mind that this is wrong, because those images are just not describing enough what these approaches are saying about cognition. So I chose to speak about the evolution of concepts in cognitive science because I won't do history of ideas, but I want to speak about the main terms that we are going to speak about, even if, I won't be speaking about neurons and memory and whatever, but I will introduce you what is linked to cognition, consciousness, in cognitive science so that you can begin this course knowing what we are going to speak about. And I am going to do some kind of weird things that I love to do in philosophy that is very academical, but I love it. So I hope that you like it, but keep in mind that, well, it's not very consensual, it's not very academical, it's really my work as a M2 student. So the question we are going to try to answer, is how did the core concepts of cognitive science evolve from a positivist to a naturalist scientific ethos? Right now, you might ask, I think you should ask, what the heck are you speaking about? Because I don't understand any words that you are using. But it's okay, I will explain it. So, I don't know if you see my... Ah oui, pointeur. Yes, cool. So, sorry, I'm just organizing my screen. Okay. So, we are going to ask the question, what is the positivist ethos of cognitive scientists, and what is the naturalist ethos? So first of all, okay, this is just what we are going to do. I hope you won't hesitate to interrupt, as always. So what is positivism, what is naturalism, and what is the ethos, the scientific ethos that I'm speaking about? For this question, I will just explain these terms, and you have to know that positivism is grounded on a hierarchical view of sciences. This is why we have a pyramid here. So one of the first things is that we have the possibility to say truth. So we are able to say what is true and what is wrong or false. And this is founded on this idea of adequation between, well, not adequation, correspondence between my proposition and my the reality, what I see, what I experiment. So this is a basic statement of philosophy, but we'll see that it is not quite evident that it seems, as it seems. So, from this definition of truth, we are going to know, to be able to define what is knowledge. And knowledge is saying something true. It's very basic. And then we have the need to determine a criteria between true, something that we can know as true, and something that we can't know if it's true or not, if it's true or wrong for the positivism. So the positivist said, okay, let's say that what is logically true is really true. So it said exactly that what we say that is formally in its structure, in the form it is using like mathematics. If it's true on this side, so if what I said is logically true, then it is really, in reality, true. So, for example, if I say I have 2 hands and one hand have 5 fingers, then I can say with certainty that I have 10 fingers. This is the basic idea. But the problem of positivism is that it, from this logical way of understanding truth and knowledge, we have a hierarchy between science that is not, in my opinion, relevant. So first of all, the higher are the formal science. Then you have physics and chemo. And then you have life science, and then you have social science. And this hierarchy is not something that will remain in naturalism. Because naturalism will think very differently from very different statements and will not be grounded on a way to understand truth and a way to understand knowledge and whatever a noseology. So what say is knowledge and is not knowledge. What's something that said that what is science and not science. It will be grounded on this idea that nature is a whole and that we have to study as scientists it with the idea of it as a whole. So it might not be in opposition with positivism, but it is very distinct. And then naturalist sciences are aiming to build an epistemical and ontological commitment. What does it mean? It means that your ontology, what you say is, and your epistemology, so the way you're knowing this ontology, the way you're understanding the world, both have to be constantly discussing with each other. So they must be on the same page, basically. And it does not specify what kind of ontology you have to choose and what kind of epistemology, so methods, you have to choose. It just have to be on the same page, okay? And of course, it's grounded on natural observation of nature. Of course, it's quantifying way to do science. So it will build models that are how to say it, that have formalism, that have quantification, that will enhance the possibility to predict, then to say, okay, we will have this kind of response if we have this kind of initial condition. And it's not very important, but we should keep in mind that naturalism is not materialism. So naturalism, as I said in the second point, will not say what is better as an epistemology or as an ontology in your way to do it, to do science, to practice science. It will just say that what exists is nature, and it is not matter or idea. We don't care about this. It will say that there's nothing supernatural, but they can be things we don't know. It can be that there are immaterial entities. It can be that there are gods, or I don't know, things that are not material. And then at the end, well, holism is not monism. It doesn't mean that everything is the same, well, has the same substance. We don't care about substance. We care about how nature is constantly a whole that is not resumable, well, I don't know, reducible to its parts. It is just this. And at the end, the ethos is what you are going to do, you as a scientist, and you in your scientific community. So it's a question of practice. And of course, it is grounded on this idea of ethics that is very directly linked to the construction of habits, the construction of behavior that will build out this that will build these habits and build the good way to do things, even if it's not an objectively good way to do things. It's something that is the norm and that is contextually justified and socially justified. This is what is an ethos. And of course, yes, this is exactly what I said. So the norm of the construction of the norm of our attitude, our way to practice science. So this was just the definition of my question, and of course I will just explain you how I do it when I do it, how I am interesting myself to this phenomenon. And first of all, you have three main terms that are very important. That is the term evolved, of course. I will study it through this idea that ideas and concepts are changing during the time. And I will ask, well, how it changed. So what leads these changes, what is the function of these changes, and maybe how we can understand it with some causal models and quantification in philosophy. That is very weird, but whatever, I like it. And so this is how I will do it. And last of all, of course, I will interest myself in how concepts do things. So concepts are not just ideas that are immaterial and not linked to any natural phenomenon. They change our way to do things. They change our way to discover the world and view it and act in it. Okay, so this is I think I can show you this all because it is it's very easy to understand here what is the direction of my work. First of all, I'm trying to be naturalistic, so I build hypotheses. I observe what I am working on, and I try to quantify it. I'm not sure if it works, but I try, and I am testing it with experiences and confirmation. So this is my naturalist way to do epistemology. I don't know if it works. I'm trying to, but well, I don't know. We'll see. So, and I will use natural sciences as a paradigm here, but it's not the paradigm as Kuhn said it. It's a paradigm as example, typical example that allow us to act the same way. Then evolutionism, because of course I will interest myself in the evolution of concepts. So my way to see concept is clearly linked to theories of evolution. And I will treat knowledge and concepts as natural phenomenon. And I will help myself with theories of complex system, and so it as something that is dynamical, that is not static, that is changing over time and changing for something, for a function. And of course, I want to remind you that evolution is not, and evolutionism is not history. It is not a description of what happened. It is an explanation of the mechanism behind with, well, of course, you don't have to imagine that it really is behind, but explanation is this idea that there are phenomena that are causally linked and that are useful to understand the world. And of course, I am not just interesting myself in behavior of people and concepts, etc., but on their function. What did they evolved for? For what function did they evolve? If they have one, because they can have none. And of course, it is not theological. It is just directed to some function, some its own process. It is directing itself somewhere, but it is not determined where specifically. And at the end, an activism, because I want to consider that maybe there are things that would be that there are ontological entities that would be very interesting in understanding our way to understand, the other way, in our way to understand the world, the mind, our actions, etc., etc. Because cognition is not just something that is linked to brain, because, well, of course it's linked to the brain, but it's not only the brain. Okay, and pragmatism, of course, because, I don't know, I think that it is cool to have pragmatical goal in our practice of science and philosophy also. And yeah, that's it. I am going to do that. I hope it will do some things in a way, I don't know. So first of all, my first part will be, oh yeah, this is how you should see my question. definitively. When you see it, you should see this specifically. It's not relevant. Okay, so first of all, the question of what is what and when and what for. This is very complicated because there is so many definitions in cognitive science. I choose the one that were the most relevant, in my opinion. We'll see. So first of all, we have objects, as I said last week, and those objects are mainly the mind, and somehow since the 70s, the 90s, also the body and especially the brain. So first of all, very short, what is the mind and the body before and after Descartes? I don't know how to say it. Descartes. Before it was more a spiritual thing. It's like the soul, anima, in Greek and in Latin. It is more linked to this idea of soul. It's something that is spiritual and that is guiding the material world. It's not really something to be linked to science, because the distinction between literature and liberal arts, more like humanities, liberal arts and science were not that important at the time, didn't even exist, I would say. Then we have the Middle Ages, when the question of body and mind was a very theological question, and the question was like, how did Jesus, why could we say that Jesus was the body of God? So it was very specific, and it does not match with our conception of mind or body nowadays. And after Descartes, we have questions that are very modern and linked to our way to think it nowadays. And this is very interesting because since Descartes, we did not really ask the question differently than this question of opposition between mind and body. So it's sad, but it's okay. Well, you know that Descartes said that you have the mind that is ideal and you have the body that is material. And what we all can know is something that is material, and what is immaterial or what is ideal is only accessible through faith and all. So okay, it's a way to do things. It was named the Cartesian dualism, and it founded the basis of the scientism in modern times. And scientism just keep in mind this only thing about, okay, we can only know scientifically know what is material, and so there is no mind. This is eliminativism. Well, mind is not relevant, I would say. And so these ideas are, I think, quite linked to this the ecological and social context that was for modernity, for example, the expanding question of the expanding technical improvements our skills were more and more efficient to do things in the world, and somehow it was great to consider, that it was somehow the justification of our very powerful sciences. So it was scientism. And then there is this question of knowledge, because if you are either a philosopher or neuroscientist or anthropologist, the question of what you know and what you don't know, but you you don't know, is something that is constantly on in question. So the knowledge and the way we are relating to our world is something that before was more vague and various, and we had very different way to speak about knowledge. And so, yeah, here are examples of all the world that could be related in a way or another in ancient Greek to knowledge. And then we had some very specific, Middle Age were very specific in their way to understand the question we are asking nowadays, because it was absolutely not the same context, ecological context. And so technically, it's not relevant. I think just what is important is that in the Middle Age we had this neat distinction between the question of why are things, that was above theological etc., and was clearly above, and the question of how does the body work, how I don't know, how, whatever, all the questions beginning with the how were vulgar and popular and not very well considered. And this grounded the beginning of our scientism, because Kant is not relevant, but it's this idea that there is this distinction between the question of how and the question of why lead us to consider that when we are knowing things that lead to a adding that is linked to adding new information on the world, so answering the question of how, it was leading to better practical skills. And this is where scientism was founded. And it is, it is in direct opposition to Middle Ages way of thinking, because the question of why was not relevant at all during our modernity time. And the question is, but why is it that we have made all these steps that are not really steps, that are way to see the world, and that now we feel like it is not good enough? Because you know that scientism was very trendy at the time, but nowadays we are like, maybe scientism is not that good. So what happened to our way to know our objects now? Well, it is very you have two schools, and one school that is very trending these times, that is postmodernism, that would say, okay, so scientism is not good, so nothing is general a general knowledge. So basically modernism will say, okay, everything is linked to its social context. Well, it's okay, I totally agree with this. But as everything is a social construct, every beliefs are equals. There is no knowledge. And I think it's not what we are trying to do in cognitive science. It clearly is not. It doesn't mean that we are not taking in account social construction at all. So we are more like on the other side of the answer, that is naturalism and pragmatism, as I said. So this idea is that maybe the distinction of mind and body that Descartes made is not a good idea, because all the cognitive sciences began to say Descartes was not pertinent. Its dualism is not good, so people choose to agree with monism or materialism, or some form of dualism that were not substantial, that were not saying there is two worlds in one. So this is naturalism. And then you have, it is definitively linked to, but you have this idea that, distinction between materiality and ideality is not relevant. So we are going to make something so that this distinction is not relevant for us as scientists anymore. And with the question of how we know and how our brain and body and cognition know things, we chose to understand it as maybe not something that is linked to logical statements, or not something that is linked to what is true and is not true, but maybe just what is justified and what make us act good, like efficient, what make us efficient in our actions. So this is something that is practically justified. And an ecological what context, I imagine. So knowledge is not objective. It's not a general objective statement. It's a general statement, but it is contextual. And it is not the consequence is not that it is not knowledge. It is knowledge because we are able to do things from this knowledge. So first of all, the brain-computer analogy, or the mind-computer analogy, whatever, I will very briefly explain it to you. I already explained to you that cognitivism and connectionism were grounded on this analogy. And it is useful for us to understand some definition of cognitive sciences. So, cognitivism is this idea that the mind processes information exactly like a computer. It said that we have representation in our mind that build images of the external world in our mind. This is representationalism. And that we are working our brain is working logically. So just like computers that are working with 0 and 1, we are working with logical statements. And they can be therefore true or false. This is, you see, very positivist. This is typically some aspects of cognitive sciences in 1950 that were directly linked to the emergence of computer and connectionism, of course, is not that different from cognitivism. What is different is that, well, maybe it does not work exactly like a computer, but maybe it works as many computers discussing one with each other. For example, it's grounded on this idea that cognition is a network of cerebral parts that are talking with each other, and this from this emerge cognition as we know it. And this is it. Cognition emerged from interaction of modules. Of course, you should not consider it as the massive modularity of Sperber or whatever. This is really a question of parts and local area. So I draw you a little something that builds a magnificent man or woman, human, whatever, something with arms and legs, but without head. I love it. With in rose, you have in violet, lila, whatever, you have what is linked to cognition as we know it, and in blue, what is linked to the equivalence on in this computer analogy. You have, as we know it, the mind, that is the computer, just like the computer, and it is a box that behaviorists will not open, but we will open it. And when we open it, we find two things that you know: the hardware, so the material part of the mind, so brain, and the software, so the logical, the software, so like, for example, your operating system or whatever, your word application, your I don't know, who cares. And this is, well, I switches things, I'm sorry. Hardware should be in blue and software should be in blue, but it's okay. And operating rules are the rules that we understand as from the exterior as mechanic laws that explain why we answer a certain way to a certain input. Okay, so I'm so sorry that I switches brain and hardware and software and operating world. It doesn't make sense here, but let's understand it. Let's switch it in our mind and understand that this info that you have in the input, that is either sensation that you have with your body and or just like demands you're asking your computer to do when you click somewhere, when you write a command or whatever. This is where the info come in, and then it go through the hardware. So it is processed by the hardware, and thanks to the operating rules that are in this hardware, that are softwares. So then it will use this information to make it will transform the information to make it in output. That will be the action of the agent, of the individual, and the response that your computer will say. For example, if you wrote a wrong command, it will say, okay, I can't do this, it doesn't make sense. And if you wrote like open this file, it will open this file on itself, and you won't have anything to do other than asking it to do this. Well, of course, it is quite problematic. And I will just end this part with this short definition of models. It's not that important, but yeah, it is very important, but it's just a point that I will make just to transition to my next part, because I like models. So, what are the functions of model and what are its features? Very shortly, I founded my research on these two papers that are very useful, and on models, of course. And I will first of all explain you that models have changed a lot since positivism, because there is a way to see models as realistic way to describe or whatever the world, but it is not here to describe, it is here to explain. And what we have to understand is that explanation is not something that needs to be real. Explanation does not want you to describe very realistically and very precisely what happened. It wants to make clear why happened what happened. So the function of model is an explanatory function that will say, okay, we have this panel of phenomena, and those phenomena, I will reduce them in one schematical or causal or mathematical or whatever all model that will explain it. And for it to be explanatory, we need to ground our view on models on this idea that we are showing causal relations between things, between phenomena, and we are not aiming to describe all the phenomena that are possible. It is absolutely not our goal. So it's very important to have this idea of an analogical model that will say, okay, I have these phenomenon, and I can say it is as if it was those sort of relationship between entities. It will be very schematical and very reductionist, and it is not a problem that models are reductionist, because it is their role to be a reduction of what happened in nature. If you don't do this, you will just have a maybe epileptical reaction to what you're trying to understand, because you can't explain well. As Aristotle said, knowledge is general. It has to say something that is not too complex as nature. It has to be understandable. Okay, I will go back on this later. So, of course, models are causal models. And causality is not correlation, because, this is the statement, post hoc ergo propter hoc. It is not true. What happened at the same time or just after something is not to be causally linked to it. So, for example, if I yawn just after you said something that could be very annoying, it does not mean that I yawned because you said something annoying. It can be, but it is not necessary. Then, of course, there's no effects without cause. This is the basis of causality, and this is definitively something deterministic. And we, as natural scientists, are in this idea of deterministic causality. Okay, so what happened can't happen without any causes. Of course, our model must be parsimonious, and parsimony, of course, is not reductionism. Parsimony is, well, reductionism as the insult in philosophy that you will use when you say you are reductionist because you are not speaking about this phenomenon or this phenomenon. Well, parsimony is this idea that you won't build too much models for one phenomenon that you, well, for one kind of phenomenon that you could explain with one more efficient and more economic model. And of course, you might know Occam's razor about this. It's not worth the time, but it's very important. And then predictability, predictability. That is not provision of meteorologues and nor fortune telling and clairvoyance. It is absolutely not this. It is really this idea that you will be able, from a certain initial condition, predict precisely what will happen. But it's not like okay, it is sure that next year at the same time, same hour, same day, Trump will say this. It's not how it works. It's working on mechanical phenomenon, causal relationships. So if there is not this in the initial condition, you won't have a phenomenon, an effect that will be like this. It's really just this kind of thing. Of course, you must know it. Okay. And of course, there's a lot of critics, as we saw. We are going far away from positivism because it is not relevant enough. And we will see how Fodor is evil, because Fodor is a positivist. But it's not a problem. We like it. We like him. I don't know if we like him. I don't like him. Whatever. So, of course, you have to remember, as I said at the beginning, that this meme is wrong. And why is it wrong? Because, first of all, this is as if there is a way more higher neural activity in the inactivism part than before. And it's wrong because inactivism is not a more evolved theory. Okay, it is not linked to more brain activity, absolutely not. And better consciousness is absolutely not linked to more neural activity. It's not how it works. And second, you know that the image in activism is more like extended cognition than an activism itself, because an activism won't center on brain, and especially won't be specifically something that will go out of your brain. It's not how it works either. And the brain is absolutely not where the cognition is. Like, it is linked to cognition, but it is not where it is. It's not how it works. And of course, inactivism is not more evolved or objectively better, but maybe it's more appropriate nowadays. I will just explain neurocentrism because it is one of the biggest critics of enactment on this positivism that is in cognitive science. And we have to remember that neuroscientism is not that problematic, because brain is central in cognition. If you have no brains, you won't be able to work at all. On the contrary, if you have no hands, you will be a cognitive agent. And we could say that we don't need necessarily to focus all the time on brain, it is sure. But, it's not that much of a problem to say that brain is important and central in cognition. It's okay. And, well, of course, we have people that are neuroscientists like Churchland and Smith Churchland that are very eliminativism. So they really just focus on what materially happened, and they don't care about mind and whatever, and they build useful things so it's okay, I guess. I have no problem with them. I just don't really agree with their ontology, but it's okay. But the problem of neuroscientism is that it tends to forget, whatever, everything that is linked to body and environment. And maybe we should think, and also it tends to blur this idea that neural is equal to a brain, and this is not right, because it's not what it is. Brain is directly and in continuity with all the nerve system, and so it really is a network on all the body. So, well, this is just what is problematic in neurocentrism. And I don't know, I wanted to speak about consciousness, and I wanted to go from this idea that neural activity was not consciousness, because there is someone that is called Carl Harris, Robin Carl Harris, that is very interesting. I love what he's doing, and I really recommend it. That wrote an article in 2014 about what is consciousness and how do we understand mind and all these things, all our objects. And he gave things that lead us to understand that mind is not quite what we think it is. So, first of all, this idea that when you brain is active, it means that you are conscious. It is not right. It is not true. Because first, consciousness is a constant equilibrium for Carl Harris, is a constant equilibrium between an energetical brain and the entropy that is in brain. So the chaotic, I don't know, it's like less energy and more energy. It's not exactly what entropy is, but entropy is more like disorder and less, I don't know. To be honest, I don't really know. So whatever, if you know, say. And so this is this idea that we have to have this equilibrium between a state of coma, a comatose state, and an epileptical state. Because if your brain is too active, if you have too much energy circulating in your brain, you will just be have epilepsy. It's just how it works. And if you have absolutely no energy and the info is not circulating right in your mind, in your brain, whatever, well, you won't be able to be fully conscious at a normal state. So this is this idea of this little schema that I made here. It's very, I'm not a pro on this subject, but it's very basic and very simplism. But you have on the center in orange or brown, you have the eigenvector, the main the sum of eigenvectors that constantly lead your brain activity through in this area that I draw here in blue or turquoise, I don't know. And in this area, you have where your equilibrium is and where you will be conscious. So this is largely inspired from the free energy principle from Princeton, and the free energy principle is very complicated. As I explain here, it's a very formal model of the mind. It is built by physicists that are fond of physics and mathematics and techniques, so it's quite ununderstandable for normal people. And at the end, well, it's good because it grounds this idea of self-organization that will lead then later on this notion of autonomy, agentivity, and this idea that you will be able to do things by yourself. But it's not quite the same thing, but just keep in mind that it is linked in one way or another. So as you see, we don't really care about the formulas. They are good, but they are, quantification, and it's good for very precise works, but it's just a large, vague presentation. So I will just show you active inference that is inspired, that is an activist understanding of free energy principle. Is it better than FEP? I don't know. I would say yes, because it's less technical. It's easy to link disciplinarity between themselves, and it is directly linked to philosophical concept as it is built and understood by people working on enactment, so philosopher. But yeah, of course, there's no formalization. So if you want to, I don't know, naturalize your work, you have to go back to FEP. I think it's a good bridge between FEP and author's discipline. And so, yes, here is my schema of this retraction loop between sensation and action that is linked directly and constantly to the environment of the agent and the agent in his environment. I love this schema because it is really synthetic on what is enactment. Basically, it's just this idea that you are something that do something by itself, the agent, and that you have a sensation that are linked to your environment and to your body as an agent, of course, and that thanks to this sensation you will be able to act in the world, be able to do things. And well, this is very basic, but this is very useful schema for an activism, I guess. Another critic that is very important about this positivism is that, first of all, reductionism is not something that we should be ashamed of, but that sometimes is a little bit problematic. I will explain it here. So, as I said, it's not that problematic. If you know that you are a reductionist, just like we know that models are reductionist, it's okay. But there is a little difference between having reductionist models and having reductionist methodology in your discipline. It means when you are, for example, a biologist, and you say, okay, biology will be able to explain psychology, you are reductionist. You are saying, literally, psychologists are not useful. That's not true. So I will reduce it by saying, okay, reductionism is saying that your level 0 is fully capable. Okay, oh no, I wrote it wrong. Whatever. So the level 0 is fully capable of explaining the level 1, so the upper level. It can be on the other way, but the majority of reductionism are like this. So what is on a smaller scale or a smaller level will be more will be totally able to explain what is above it. And it is problematic, Imo. And second, this is this idea that entities are directly associated with natural phenomena, but these entities can't be linked to other levels. For example, if you have something that is at the level of we'll say at the social level, you won't be able to say it exists as an entity if you only recognize what happened in the biological level as existing, so as entities, as relevant entities. So everything that exists is only is level dependent, so is only at one level. Just instances here. Yeah, this is what I said at the beginning. You have, okay, that's not relevant. You have it here, and yeah, of course, there's other things. You have a variety way to be a rejectionist, but there are problematic ways. So what it avoids this idea of level 0 being able to explain the whole level 1, that it don't allow us to technically think about and to the causality loops. When you are working, for example, in psychology, you won't be able to accept the fact that there are phenomena in the social level that could be explained by themselves. So that could be causal between themselves. But the biggest problem is, so this is the N1 feedback. The biggest problem is, because I don't know, the other problem is that you won't have top-down causality. And top-down causality doesn't really exist, we don't care, but it is this idea that you will have a causality that goes through the levels. So you could, for example, have a causality that will go down top between psychological phenomenon and social phenomenon. And if you accept this in a sense, when you're a reductionist, you won't accept it in the other way. So it's kind of sad. And so this is directly linked to this idea of scale invariance. We can go back on it if you want. And the second point is from an ontological perspective. From an ontological perspective, you won't have really this idea of autonomy, of something that is not specifically at your level, that this is linked to these ontological entities being only level dependent to their phenomena, and you won't be able to think about holism because it's exactly the opposite from a philosophical point of view. Holism says the whole is more than the parts, the sum of the parts, and reductionism said parts are enough to explain the whole. And from an epistemological point of view, that is very problematic from my point of view, is that transdisciplinarity is not something that is really easy to do when you're a reductionist, a disciplinary reductionist. And you will lack some external coherence with other theories. Like, for example, if biologists says the organism don't need its environment, for example, I don't know, they won't say this, but you never know. We'll take a very precise example as individualism. The individual is autonomous, but is also independent and can be extracted from its context to explain phenomenon, and we are not supposed to take in account the social context. For example, if sociology said, okay, this is, or anthropology said, okay, social context is very important in the construction of the individual, you won't be able to be individual for a long time. But if you're a reductionist, you will say, I don't care what anthropology is saying about you can say it. You're not forced to say it, of course, but it is something that a reductionist could say. Okay, Serval? Would you say something, or I don't know? Okay, I don't hear you. So, last, the solution, IMO, is this notion of emergence. So, emergence is not the equivalence as emergence in the way emergentists think it is. It is definitely is not that. It's more like something. Well, okay. First of all, negative definition. So emergence is not something that is linear because, well, you know, emergence is this idea that there is something that will happen if there is enough complexity at level 0. Something will happen at level 1. And it is not discontinuous because it don't make any sense. At the end, it is continuous because the N1 level can't be working alone. It needs the N0 level. Level N1 is not causally explainable by level N0. This is one way to define emergence. Just here, sorry, evil. Yeah, of course. Okay. Here we have, on the right of my screen, we have a very nice schema of what is emergence and what is not. And emergence, of course, is the B, because the A is this Darwinian evolution of, well, if you see the whole species, you will see that little by little it is changing, but there's no gap between the two. This is not emergence. What emerge is not at the level of species. And C is a Bersonian evolution. It's not relevant for us, but there is something like a discontinuity, you see. And of course, Searle is evil. Why Searle is evil? Of course, because he is an emergentist, and he says that, yeah, of course, cognition emerge from your brain activity and your brain interaction, your brain parts interaction. But, you know, when we are at the level of society, it does not work the same way. He say like, okay, individuals are not somehow, they are analogical. There is an analogy. He draw an analogy between society and cognition, but he never says society exists. He only says something emerged in our brain, and it looks like it is like society, but society does not emerge. So he did not really understood what emergence is, I think. And for my last part, okay, I'll be very, very synthetic here because it's not that important. But the question of the relevance of this is philosophical, epistemical question. So why is now an activism better? So defining our research program, you have this idea. No, this is not what I wanted to do. Okay, you have this idea that there is Popper that says, okay, everything in a theory is an isola, so something that can be studied all alone, and not a theory, an hypothesis, the hypothesis of a theory. And it can be falsified objectively. It's wrong. Kuhn said, well, it's wrong for us nowadays, of course. Kuhn said, no, theories and hypotheses are contextual to the social complex of sciences, complex context of sciences, as they are determined in their paradigm, as he said in his paradigm theory. And the problem of Kuhn is that it leads to postmodernism and to subjectivities. And yeah, of course, I explain, it's not really relativism, because relativism is this idea that what exists is constantly a relation with the world. And here it's more like non-deterministic, like it's too specific. It's not useful, I think. And well, yes, of course, the big problem of Kuhn is that he don't give an objective a definition of what is a science, what is not. Popper gave a formal criteria, but maybe we could have material criteria, in the sense that it is something that is linked to the context and that is not formal and objective and out of context. So, wow, I forgot a bullet here. Okay, whatever. And Lakatos give us this idea of research program that is very useful, and I would say we have a naturalistic research program, because this is our research program as cognitive science. And it is cool because research program is something that will somehow solve this opposition between Popper and Kuhn, and it's cool and I like it, and it grounded this naturalism of Quine and of Duhem, and it's cool. And yeah, everything, I like it. This is why I wanted to speak about it. And of course, we could build a specific ontology linked to our epistemology, so that we will be able to do science the way we want, so the way we think it is the more appropriate, the more relevant nowadays. Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. So how do we know if it's relevant? So it's something that I am trying to do. So I don't have the answers, and we will see it. But from a pragmatist point of view, we just have to know if it works. It does something. Does it work as programmatic research program? And what does it change in our understanding of the world? Will it level up our practical skills? How will our method change and everything? And is it relevant? Relevant is also the question of, is it adequate to nowadays? And I think it is, because maybe we are I think it's better than positivism. I don't know. It's my idea, but I guess it will be satisfactory, because the response of the mind-body problem and the proportion problem are quite satisfactory. We'll see if we have to try it. And I think it will be very useful to solve this problem that Nunes said, that cognitive science don't manage to speak between them, because they are transdisciplinary. This is a transdisciplinary field of research, and we have to speak as neuroscientist and linguist and philosopher and all that. And yeah, this is just a joke, but Yeah. Okay, this is a joke, but just maybe we should not go into postmodernism, because postmodernism is kind of subjectivity, and well, naturalism is definitively not something that could agree with this idea of subjectivity. It clearly is linked to the question of relativism, but it is not linked to this idea that everything is okay. Ciao. That is linked to I don't know, theory of knowledge and belief being the same. Well, what? No, this is naturalism. This idea that, well, knowledge and belief are the same, but maybe it's not that of a problem as soon as you know it, and everything is not just subjective, and you can do things you when you have something that works. It's somehow true, not true in this objective definition, but true in this large consideration of science as pragmatic. And yeah, this main topic of pragmatism is very important. So here it is. J'ai fini. That's the end. Oh. Ok, je pense. Hop. Ok, cool.
Ok, super. Bon, merci. C'était super.
Bon, cool. If you have any question or whatever on subject that I very briefly spoke about, it's okay. Non, aucun. Notamment Avel qui m'a dit nope.